Last time on the Skip and Josh podcast.
So the Buffalo News, they published their NHL power rankings. You know, the Buffalo Sabres were last.
They are by far the worst team in the league. No?
Right. One of the teams ahead of the Buffalo Sabres was the Seattle Kraken.
The team that doesn't even exist yet is already better than the Sabres.
Right, because you know whoever they get in the expansion draft, they're automatically going to be better than the Sabres.
You're listening to the Skip and Josh podcast with Skip Sherman and Josh Obadia.
Okay, Skip, so today we're going to count down our favorite 1990s movies. But before we get to that, I recorded my television and sent you a short video this week, which I might be the only person on the planet that actually does that.
You sent me two. Wasn't there two?
There were two, but I'm only concerned about one of them because on, I think, Tuesday, it was the anniversary of the Pedro Martinez game where he had a perfect game going. And then he hit, I forget the name of the Cincinnati Reds hitter.
Reggie Sanders.
Right, he hit Reggie Sanders to ruin his perfect game. And Reggie Sanders, like an idiot, charged the mound thinking that he hit him on purpose.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, obviously, I know how angry that made you because I remember you telling me the story of when you were watching that game
we
live.
I think we talked about this on another episode for like quite a while.
We did.
I was in a hotel room in Edmonton watching that game.
Yes.
And when Reggie Sanders charged the mound, I was just like, what in the hell? Like, what kind of moron do you have to be to think that he's hitting you on purpose when he's got a perfect game going?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So the reason I mentioned this is because, so that was April 13th, 1994.
Right.
On April 14th, 2021, this past Wednesday,
right,
Carlos Rodon of the Chicago White Sox had a perfect game going for 8 1/3 innings, and he hit a batter. Now, it certainly wasn't intentional because I think he hit him on the foot or something, but basically, almost to the day, the exact same thing happened where a guy had a perfect game going and hit a batter to ruin his perfect game.
Pretty nuts. No. Now look, we've been on a little mini hiatus here, so we haven't actually talked about so much stuff that's happened since the last time we recorded. There's so much stuff that's happened. A lot of it is in baseball. Obviously, we've had baseball opening day and everything, and I wanted to. There was another no hitter. There was already a no hitter this year.
Joe Musgrove,
right?
Yeah.
But what surprised me about that is that it was the first no-hitter in the history of the San Diego Padres. And I was like, that cannot be right. Like, how can that possibly be? They came into the league the same year as the Expos in 1969, right?
I think you're right, yes. I mean, I guess it could be that obviously it is, but I mean,
yeah,
just some teams, I guess, are unlucky. They just never had a perfect game or a no-hitter.
I was just so surprised because we know, like, even like the Expos, who came into the league the same time as the Padres, had several no-hitters, right? Like Dennis Martinez, obviously the perfect game, and Charlie Lee, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think Bill Stoneman even pitched 2 no-hitters, like before when we were little kids, you know? But anyways.
By the way, you know, there have been over 300 no-hitters. So while it is a big deal, it's not as big a deal as it used to be, especially these days. I find in the last 5-10 years, there's a lot more no-hitters than there used to be.
Well, because now it's all strikeouts or walks.
Yeah.
So the no-hitter is actually more possible, right? I think.
Now, perfect game, I think there's only been 23 of them, so that's still a big deal.
Well, that's a whole other story, yeah. But then, so just to go away from baseball, because we know baseball started and everything, and I have some great stats for you about baseball, about stuff that's happened this year. We can talk about another time, whatever. But like, also the March Madness happened since we last recorded, and Baylor was crowned the champion, and it was a pretty weird tournament, no? Like that semifinal game with Jalen Suggs' miracle shot, you know, against UCLA was like so epic, and then the final a few days later was just so anticlimactic. I felt kind of bad for the tournament in general, you know, like because it just wasn't a good game at all.
That tends to happen, you know. So in the Final Four, there's 3 games, the 2 semifinals and the final. And it seems like of those 3 games, there's only one good one. You never know which one it's going to be, but it seems like there's always one good game of those 3, and the other 2 are not that good.
But, you know, I was really rooting for Gonzaga, you know, like every great team, and not just in NCAA basketball, in any sport, usually any like great team goes through some kind of adversity where they have to overcome and they get some kind of real epic win. And then that sort of propels them to the championship, you know? And I thought like, oh, wow, they just won this game against UCLA on this miracle shot. And now for sure they're going to beat Baylor. And they just got blown out. So I was like, I was really disappointed. I felt bad for Gonzaga. Like, they're never going to win, are they?
Well, I mean, they're still good. And actually, I heard they have a very good recruiting class for next season. So
Jalen Suggs is a freshman, right? I don't know if he's going out for the draft or if he's staying, but I mean.
But even if he leaves, I heard they have some good players coming in. And by the way, I think the first game next season for Gonzaga is against Duke.
That's great.
In Las Vegas.
Great way to start the season, no?
Pretty crazy. We didn't do our bracket this year.
No.
However, I happened to go look, and some people entered our pool.
No, come on.
Because, you automatically get an email sent to you because if you played the year before. So I guess a few people received the email and filled out their bracket.
So how many?
I think 6 people did.
Oh my God. Do you know who they are?
I mean, I'm not looking, I don't have it in front of me, but if you go log on, you'll see the names of the people who filled out a bracket.
That's complete madness right there.
Well, it's March Madness.
Mailbag.
So I don't have listener mail. I don't have any because, the last episode was our least favorite stats, and that's a very niche topic, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we didn't get much feedback on that, but I do have I do have something related to last week's episode that I wanted to bring up that happened since, right?
Yeah.
So talking about the worst stats, right? That Gonzaga UCLA game, when it went into overtime, they showed on the screen record in overtime in the NCAA tournament history. Gonzaga 0-1, UCLA 7-3. I wanted to kill I wanted to kill CBS. Like, I couldn't believe that they would put that on the screen. Like, can there be anything more dumb than showing that? Like, it doesn't have anything to do with anything. First of all, the UCLA team and the Gonzaga team, maybe show us their overtime record this year. That would be relevant. But show that Gonzaga's 0-1 and UCLA 7-3 in NCAA tournament. Those were probably all in the 60s. Who knows when they were? You know?
Right, because obviously UCLA's been in the tournament way more times than Gonzaga.
I just thought when I saw that, I was like, that is the perfect example of a stupid stat right there.
Yeah. And there's tons of those that you see on the bottom of the screen during a game.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know you said you had no listener mail, but am I allowed to send in a listener mail to our own show?
Of course, why not? Well, you might as well just say what you want to
Well, that's what I'm going to do. Rather than send it in, I'm going to tell you that I'm going to pretend to be a listener, and I'm going to tell us that we forgot to include a song when we did our best lyrics. And that song is Life's Been Good by Joe Walsh. This song has some of the best lyrics of all time.
You think?
There's one line in the song where he says, I go to parties sometimes until 4. It's hard to leave when you can't find the door.
Yeah. Well, the whole song is just about his life in excess, in living in excess.
Yes.
Yeah, I was never a huge fan of that song, to be honest.
I like the song.
All right. Are you ready for the 90s movies, Josh?
I am ready for the 90s movies. This list was actually a little bit more difficult than I expected it to be because there's a lot of good movies in the 90s. At least I think so. And to be honest, I'm sure once I'm done this list and we get feedback, I'm sure I'm going to have forgotten to put something good in my list.
Yeah. Well, in doing the research for this episode, do you know that there's many articles, and I found several, and including one in the New York Times, I think another one in maybe the New Yorker, or I forget what publication. There's a school of thought that 1999, that one year, is the greatest year in the history of movies. There's many articles that are going off about that, which I just found pretty amazing.
That's interesting. None of my movies are from 1999, not one of them.
And then friend of the show, Matt Sanderson from the Nooks and Crannies podcast, who's out in British Columbia, sent me a link to a podcast. Well, I don't know if you ever listened to this podcast called 99% Invisible.
No, I haven't.
Anyways, it's pretty popular. It talks about things that you see in everyday life that you don't realize the history of it, basically, or why it's there. And they have a whole episode on the history of the megaplex, like these multi theater movie theaters. And that trend started in the 90s or late 80s, let's say. And the podcast is interesting because it talks about how the advent of the megaplex itself fueled the movie business and it created this huge boom in the movie business in the 90s, which is one of the reasons why we have all these movies in the 90s that we're about to talk about. So it's pretty amazing. I'll put a link to it. It's a great listen, actually.
Okay, cool.
So, boy, oh boy, you're going to kill me.
Why?
But I have 30 honorable mentions.
Oh my God. I have 8.
So I don't know if you want me to read them or not, but like I have a huge list of honorable mentions, Josh. It's absolute madness, I'm not going to list my honorable mentions, but just to tell you, like, some of the big ones that are in my honorable mentions are Heat, The Fugitive, Saving Private Ryan, Jerry Maguire, Good Will Hunting, Philadelphia, Clueless, Reality Bites, Forrest Gump, The Matrix, like Braveheart, and then the animated Lion King, Aladdin. Like, these are all in my honorable mentions. So what a great decade for movies,
Yeah, I mean, if I'll tell you, my 8 honorable mentions, or maybe it's 9, I don't even know. These could have been my top 7 because they're so good. So
yeah, I know what you mean.
The Usual Suspects, A Few Good Men, Mallrats, For Love of the Game, Good Will Hunting, Clueless, Empire Records, Jerry Maguire, and Rounders.
I was sure Usual Suspects was going to be in your top 7. I was sure of that.
It might have been, but it didn't make the cut.
Wow. Okay, well, this is going to be interesting. Like, this is really going to be interesting. I can't wait to see and hear what's in your top 7. And you go first, right?
Number 7.
So number 7 for me, and because you know me, so I don't think any of these are going to be a surprise to you. But number 7 for me from 1994 is Clerks.
You know what the real tragedy about all this is? I'm not even supposed to be here today.
I believe that was the first Jay and Silent Bob movie.
Yes, it was. Clerks is 94. Yeah, Clerks is 94.
Yeah, there's a Clerks 2, which is terrible, by the way. But the first Clerks is great because they're actually playing street hockey on the roof of the convenience store.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a million reasons why the movie's great, but that's just one of them.
I'm a big fan of Kevin Smith. I know you are also. Let's just say I'm going to talk about Clerks in a second.
Okay.
So, number 7 for me is from 1993, and that's The Sandlot.
You're killing me, Smalls!
Now, it was in our list when we did a couple years ago. We did our favorite baseball movies, and The Sandlot obviously rates very high. And I felt like I had to include it, even though it sort of doesn't fit with the rest of my list. I felt like I had to include it, and it has a deserving spot in the top 7. It's a great movie about friendship, nostalgia, baseball. It's so charming, so funny. It still holds up today. When you watch it now, I still could watch it today and just love it, So
Number 6.
Nice. So number 6 for me is from 1996, and it's Swingers with
oh man, you see, you said it. You said you're gonna go over, you're gonna hear movies, we're gonna get feedback, and we're gonna forget about. I didn't even think about that movie. That's great. That's so great.
Well, Vince Vaughn, Jon Favreau, a great movie, very funny, and so it glorifies the whole Vegas scene, of course.
They're gonna give Daddy the Rain Man suite. You dig that? We're going to Vegas, Mike.
Vegas! You think we get there by midnight?
Money, we're gonna be up 500 by midnight.
Yeah! Vegas!
Vegas, baby, Vegas!
And I mean, I've been to Vegas, and let me tell you, Vegas is not as good as the movie makes it seem. Vegas is good,
Sure.
but it's not as good as the movie makes it seem. Like, everything is better in movies.
It's a great movie, like that scene where he meets the girl and then he leaves 10 messages on her answering machine.
That's one of the best
oh
scenes.
My God. It's just so, it's a great movie. I love it. And it really launched the career of Favreau and Vince Vaughn.
Yeah.
All right. So you're going to hate me for number 6 because I cheated.
You grouped a bunch of movies together?
Yeah, Clerks, Mallrats, Chasing Amy. I
That
went
is
with
cheating.
the Kevin Smith trilogy. Now, Kevin Smith had many movies after those three, but those were the first three, right? And they are sort of considered a kind of trilogy, even though they don't continue one after the other. And the characters, even though there's some overlap to the characters, even some overlap of the actors playing different characters, like Ben Affleck is in Mallrats and he's the main character in Chasing Amy, but not the same person, right? So, I love all three. All three, I love them for different reasons. Clerks, like you said, it was made in 1984. It's a black and white movie.
1994.
1994. That started like the whole indie movie scene. They made that movie for $27,000 and it made $3 million in the theater, right?
That's a good return on investment.
Yeah. So that was just the biggest like boom for indie movies. People were trying to make the next Clerks, And like you said, Jay and Silent Bob are in all of them. They're just the comedy aspect. All three of these movies are different. Clerks is this artsy film, all in black and white. Mallrats is a straight up comedy and really kind of wacky in a way. And Chasing Amy, which I watched this past year because it happened to be on TV, is a really serious movie with a lot of comedy aspects, but it's really quite serious. It's just exploring the nature of relationships. And I would recommend all three to anybody who wants to watch.
Breakfast, schmreakfast. Look at the score, for God's sake. I'm only in the middle of the second and I'm winning 12-2. Breakfast come and go, Renee. Now Hartford, the Whale. Hey, they only beat Vancouver once, maybe twice in a lifetime.
So yes, you did cheat because if I would have cheated, I would have done the same thing and grouped them all together.
I know, sorry.
But I picked my favorite
But which is your favorite of the three?
Well,
is Clerks your favorite of the three?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. I think Mallrats is probably my favorite of the three, but it's pretty close. Anyways.
You probably don't remember this. You got me as a gift one year the movie Mallrats, which I have on VHS here in my apartment.
Yeah, but you can't play it anymore.
Oh, no, I can because I kept my VCR.
Ah, good for you.
And the reason I kept my VCR is because it has a clock on it, and that's the only way I know what time it is when I'm looking at my television.
Wait, so you haven't just kept your VCR, you have it plugged in?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Love it.
I use it twice a year. And the reason is because, as I said, it has a clock. And I have to change, we have to change our clocks twice a year. But in order to change the clock on the VCR, you actually have to play a movie for like 30 seconds or whatever, 10 seconds. Mallrats is the movie that I play.
Yeah. You have to play a movie to do that?
You have to play a movie because you have to it's weird. You can only change the clock by using the on-screen display. And the on-screen display only works if you play a movie for a few seconds.
That's nuts.
Yeah, it's a VCR from the 90s, right? So what do you expect?
Number 5.
Number 5 for me is from 1994, and it's Reality Bites.
Hello, you've reached the winter of our discontent.
I'm making this documentary about my friends, but it's really about people who are trying to find their own identity without having any real role models or heroes or anything.
And it seems like your friends would be perfect for that.
With Winona Ryder and Ethan Hawke. It was a fun movie, especially that time in my life. I could certainly relate to it. And actually, I think one of the characters, if I'm not mistaken, Janine Garofalo, was working at the Gap in the movie, and I used to work at the Gap, as you recall.
I remember.
So
yeah.
So even more that I could relate to. Anyway, it's a really good movie and has a really good soundtrack as well.
I liked the movie. It was in my honorable mentions. I had the soundtrack, the CD. I watched it recently. It doesn't hold up as much as you think, but it's still very good, so yeah, good choice. So 5 for me, Quentin Tarantino makes an appearance. That's from 1994, and that's Pulp Fiction.
You know what they call a quarter pounder with cheese in Paris?
They don't call it a quarter pounder with cheese?
Oh man, they got the metric system. They wouldn't know what the a quarter pounder is.
And what do they call it?
They call it Royale with cheese.
Royale with cheese.
That's right.
Now, I don't know if this is in your list or not. I don't know how much of a Tarantino guy you are. I could have put Jackie Brown also in this list. I do like that movie a lot. But Pulp Fiction is, I guess, considered maybe his greatest movie, some people would argue. I I look, I love Pulp Fiction. It's full of like quirky characters, the Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson and Uma Thurman and then the whole Bruce Willis part of it. And I just remember, okay, did we see this movie together? Do you remember? Or
I don't remember.
Okay, so I remember going the first weekend this came out, and the theater was packed, and we went with a bunch of people, and as soon as the movie was over, in my head, I'm thinking, oh my God, I absolutely love that movie. I could watch it again right now. I wish I could watch it again right now. I want to see it again this minute. And then literally as I'm saying this, it's in a thought bubble above my head. One of the girls that was with us, a girlfriend of a friend of ours, stood up and said, "That was the worst movie I've ever seen in my life. I wanted to walk out."
I don't remember this at all, so I must not have been with you.
So, like, that reaction is amazing because last year, Tarantino came out with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Yeah. And I haven't seen it yet, but on Facebook, I literally had people that I'm friends with saying it was the greatest movie they've ever seen, and I had other people saying it was the worst movie they've ever seen. They wanted to walk out. It's the same thing. So, like, anything that elicits that type of reaction is obviously doing something right, So that's my number 5.
I mean, it's like ice cream flavors. You love a flavor, I might hate that same flavor.
Yeah, that's why they have 31 flavors.
Number 4.
We are on number 4, and this is from 1992. And this is similar to Reality Bites. 2 years earlier, the movie Singles, which also has a really good soundtrack. Not quite the same, but a lot of that grunge Seattle music, which you know how much I love. So obviously I like the soundtrack. And just it was, especially because Singles came out first, it was sort of, for me, I guess, the first kind of that type of movie.
Tell me from a girl's point of view, what do you really want from a guy?
Well, when I first moved out here from Tucson, I wanted a guy with looks, security, caring, someone with their own place, someone who said, "Bless you," or "Gesundheit" when I sneezed, and someone who liked the same things as me, but not exactly, and someone who loves me.
Tall order.
Yeah, I scaled it down a little.
What is it now?
Someone who says Gesundheit when I sneeze, although I prefer "bless you."
Yeah, like a 20-something movie, yeah, I get you.
It
had a great soundtrack. I mean, it was the grunge soundtrack, it had Pearl Jam.
Soundgarden.
Soundgarden. Well, Paul Westerberg is really prominent on there. Good choice. So number 4 for me is a movie that I actually was sure it came out in the 80s. And my wife pointed out to me that it's from 1990. And she said, this has to be on your list because she knows how much I love the movie. And that is The Hunt for Red October.
Didn't you used to have a t-shirt?
Well, yeah, I did actually. But so anyways, yeah. So Sean Connery, Alec Baldwin. I mean, it's based on the Tom Clancy novel. And it's about a Russian submarine captain who wants to defect to the United States, and he takes a Russian sub sort of under his control to accomplish this. It's kind of a crazy story, but a great movie, and I love submarine movies. Something about the submarine movies I like. But yes, I had a t-shirt that was Hunt for Red October, but it had nothing to do with the movie. It was a Boston Red Sox t-shirt.
Oh, yes. Now I remember.
With the Red Sox logo, and it said Hunt for Red October. Obviously, like they're trying to get the Red Sox playing in October in the playoffs.
Right.
So,
got it.
Yeah.
Number 3.
Okay, so number 3 for me is from 1996, and there's too many good actors and actresses in it for me to list them all. So I'll just tell you, it's Beautiful Girls, which I love this movie.
I had the soundtrack for that also.
I don't have the soundtrack, but there are many beautiful girls in the movie, so the title is very apropos. Yeah. But one of the things I also like about this movie is I have always wanted to drive a snowplow. It is one of my dreams to drive a snowplow.
Right.
And so when I see that one of the characters in the movie, that's his job, I got very excited.
Is that Michael Rappaport, the guy who drives a snowplow?
Yeah, well, he's not the only one. There's him, and I think his little brother also.
Right. And Natalie Portman's in that movie, but she's like 12.
She's
12 or 14.
I think she plays a 12-year-old, but I think in real life she was a teenager at that point.
Right.
So.
That's a tremendous movie. Really, really good movie. So number 3 for me, Cub, this is a movie that I love, if you know me at all. And that is the movie called Before Sunrise from 1995.
See, I completely forgot about that one.
Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy.
All right, I have an admittedly insane idea, but if I don't ask you this, it's just going to haunt me the rest of my life. I have no idea what your situation is, but I feel like we have some kind of connection, right?
Yeah, me too.
Great. So listen, here's the deal. This is what we should do. You should get off the train with me here in Vienna and come check out the town.
Now I'm going to call my best friend in Paris, who I'm supposed to have lunch with in 8 hours. Okay?
Okay.
Ring, ring. Pick up the phone.
Hello?
I don't think I'm going to be able to make it for lunch today. I'm sorry. I met a guy on the train, and I got off with him in Vienna. I was still there.
Are you crazy?
I watch this movie every time I can. Anytime it's on TV, I will watch it. It's very personal for me because I in my younger days, I actually had a similar experience to what's in this movie. So it hits a little bit close to home for me in a sense that, at one point I did meet someone from the United States when I was traveling in Europe, and we met traveling, just like they did. We didn't share a night, one night only, but something close. So I do love the movie, and I don't know if you know the history of this movie, but there's a trilogy, right? There's 2 other sequels, Before Sunset and Before Midnight.
Yeah, I've seen the second one, but not the third one. I've seen the first and the second one, but not the third.
Yeah, me too. So I've seen Before Sunset, which is the second one, takes place almost 9 or 10 years later, where they reconnect, and I didn't love it. So because of that, I never wanted to see the last one. It's almost like a movie that didn't make it into our top 7, but was in my honorable mentions, The Matrix. Have you ever seen The Matrix? Well, The Matrix is not your style.
No, not at all.
But I really loved The Matrix #1. And because of that, I never saw Matrix 2 or 3. I'm like, I don't want to ruin the first one. Why should they give me more fluff, where the first one is just perfectly self-contained movie? So,
see, I didn't even know there was a Before Midnight. This is the first I'm hearing of it. So,
yeah, it's interesting. You can read many articles about how Richard Linklater, the director, and Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy have been sending emails and writing possible scripts all this time for the last 40 years,
mm-hmm.
However long it's been, not 40, but 25 years. So it's the other movies are based on emails that they've written to each other, about how the characters could develop and something like that.
Well, that's one that I forgot and should have been in my list.
Number 2.
Number 2 is from 1997, and it's called Grosse Point Blank with John Cusack. I love this movie. First of all, it too has a good soundtrack.
I forgot about Grosse Point Blank. It's a really good movie. Yeah.
It is a good movie, and it also has a good soundtrack. And I do like John Cusack movies. In fact, I tried to get another John Cusack movie into my list, only to find out that it wasn't in the 90s, so obviously I couldn't include it. But he's one of my favorite actors, actually. And so it's interesting because it's not exactly a comedy, this movie. It's got a serious storyline, but yet there are a lot of funny parts in it.
Well, it would be considered what they call a dark comedy.
Right, yes, yeah.
How do you feel?
I'm feeling uneasy, man.
Well, look, Mark, I don't want to suggest anything that might be uncomfortable for you, but you might consider the possibility that part of your problem, part of the thing that's making you so miserable is the angst over killing a lot of people.
Yeah, good choice. Just like you said, I had 30 honorable mentions and it wasn't even on there because I hadn't even thought about it. Wow. Good movie. Number 2, when you want to talk about dark, not a comedy, just dark, is The Silence of the Lambs from 1991. Have you ever seen it?
I've seen it, yes. Oh, that movie scared me.
I do wish we could chat longer, but I'm having an old friend for dinner.
Okay, it scared the hell out of me the first time I saw it, and it still scares the hell out of me every time I see it now, and I just watched it a few months ago. What are you going to say about Silence of the Lambs? It was in 1991, with Jodie Foster, Anthony Hopkins. It's directed by Jonathan Demme. The film won all kinds of awards. Like, it won all the Academy Awards in 1991. Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress, like all kinds of stuff, right? So it's got all kinds of accolades. And I mean, anybody who wants to watch, if you like kind of horror, but you don't want to watch like a slasher movie where people are just getting killed, watch Silence of the Lambs, this is the movie that started off, was the first kind of movie in my life that showed really graphic stuff, about crime scenes and dead bodies and that kind of stuff, that spawned all the CSIs of the world, I guess. But, look, I love Silence of the Lambs. What do you want me to tell you? But I tried to watch this new show that came out this year on, I guess it's CBS maybe, called Clarice.
I saw the commercials for that.
Yeah, I watched one episode and then I ditched it.
So Silence of the Lambs is a much scarier movie than all those other horror movies, like the Halloween movies and the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. This is actually a scary movie. So,
well, it's scary because it's much more realistic. The other ones are stupid.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Number 1.
So I'm already at number 1.
Yeah, I can't believe it. And we haven't had any of the same movie. Well, the only one we had the same was Clerks, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
See, most of mine are feel-good, happy movies.
Yeah.
You have some serious, dark movies in your list.
Yeah. So what's number 1? I really thought Usual Suspects was going to be number 1, so I couldn't even tell you what your number 1's.
Well, I don't think you'll be surprised. It's from 1996, and it's That Thing You Do, which I love that song, first of all. And it's just such a good movie. From beginning to end, if it was on every week, I'd watch it probably every week.
That's a great film. I just always found that movie a little bit too long, but it is a great movie. It is
also
a great
has
movie.
A very
Absolutely.
good cast.
Oh, the cast is amazing. All those guys went on to be bigger stars. Forget about that Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks is just a small part of this movie.
Right.
Yeah. No, good choice, Josh. Really good choice. And like you said, that song's great, right?
I love that song.
Yeah. So number 1, it's amazing. Your number 1 is not in my list and my number 1 is not in your list. And we haven't even mentioned my number 1. And my number 1 is probably on a lot of people's favorite movies of all time. And that's The Shawshank Redemption from 1994.
See, there's another one that I forgot about.
Really?
I completely forgot about it. I don't know if it would have made it into my top 7,
Yeah.
but I should have put it in my honorable mentions at least.
Right. So Tim Robbins, Morgan Freeman, it's about a guy sent to prison for a crime he didn't commit, and then all about the life that he has in prison, and eventually the huge escape. Spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen a movie from 1994 that have to tell you that there's a prison break. But yeah, just an incredible movie.
Dear Red, if you're reading this, you've gotten out. And if you've come this far, maybe you're willing to come a little further. You remember the name of the town, don't you?
Zihuatanejo.
I could use a good man to help me get my project on wheels. I'll keep an eye out for you, and the chessboard ready. Remember, Red, hope is a good thing, maybe the best of things, and no good thing ever dies. I will be hoping that this letter finds you, and finds you well. Your friend, Andy.
It was nominated, in my research I found out, Josh, it was nominated for 7 Academy Awards, but didn't win. So
it didn't win any awards?
No.
I'm surprised.
And I also found out that the screenplay is by Stephen King. I didn't even know that either.
I didn't know either.
Because it's not really horror. It's just...
No, it's not. But it is
a
really good movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's not a true story then?
No, I never thought it was.
Okay. I didn't think so either.
But a great movie, and I actually like your list. I like how we have completely different lists. It's really, really great.
We do have completely different lists. I had a feeling it would be that way.
The Skip and Josh podcast is available wherever you listen to podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. If you listen to the show through Apple Podcasts, please leave a review. To interact with the show, send an email to skipandjoshshow@gmail.com. Follow the show on Twitter @skipandjosh, and go to facebook.com/skipandjosh to like the show page. To see links mentioned on today's episode, go to skipandjosh.com. And now for some final thoughts from the guys.
So I watched a show this week. I think there's 8 episodes. It's on HBO show. It's on Crave, and I highly recommend it. And that's called Sharp Objects. It's from a few years ago, but I just never watched it.
Okay.
As you know, I'll watch anything with Amy Adams, and this applies to that.
I didn't know she was in it.
It's really going to mess you up. It's really kind of crazy. So tell me, what is bugging you?
Things that bug me?
So, I mean, these are not really new things, and I don't think I've mentioned them in our previous What Bugs Me's. But what really bugs me, there's 2 things, and they both involve sports. One is when you're watching a hockey game and, let's say a player misses a golden opportunity and he's frustrated and he goes back to the bench and he smashes his stick. It bugs me because these sticks are expensive, but these players, they don't care. They could care less about anything because they have no concept of reality whatsoever. However, you know that there are little kids watching this, and little kids look up to these professional players, and then a little kid will go to his hockey game, he'll get pissed off, and he'll break his stick.
Yeah.
Except,
well, one time, my son was on a team when he was in Adam level. So that's I don't know, 11. I don't remember the ages, but anyways, so one of the kids on his team, the first game after the Christmas break, comes to the first game, the first practice after the Christmas break, and he shows his whole team, look at this brand new stick I got for Christmas, right? And the dad's there. The dad told me he spent $250 on this stick, and it's this fancy stick. And what happens? The kid's trying to show all his friends how great the stick is, and he leans on it on the floor in the dressing room to show, and it completely snaps.
Unbelievable.
There goes that.
Obviously sticks are way more expensive now than they were when I was 10 years old.
Absolutely.
But the interesting part is they're more expensive, and they also break much more easily than they used to when I was 10 years old.
Oh, I mean, every game when you watch the NHL game, every single game you see sticks breaking for no reason.
Yeah.
No?
Well, because they're made with this different material that's not as sturdy.
Yeah.
The other thing that bugs me in sports is any basketball game, college or pro, any football game, college or pro, there are way too many timeouts. And this is a problem that can be easily fixed. Because I think in football, each team gets 3 timeouts per half, right? Yeah. I don't know how many they get in basketball. They just have to say teams don't get timeouts anymore. That's it.
Well, the NFL could easily change it and go the CFL way, which is 1 timeout only.
Right, or none.
Right? Or none. In basketball, there's just way too many. And actually, with all the reviews that go on now in the NBA in the final 2 minutes of a game, the league should actually they should be looking at lowering the amount of timeouts that teams have, because it's absolutely absurd.
There are so many stoppages in play to begin with. You have your commercials where you have to do the commercials. I get it. If a game's televised, which they all are, you have to do commercials because that's how they get paid. I don't mind those, but the teams should not be allowed to call their own timeouts.
Now, this is not going to change the timeout thing, but it might change how long the ending of a game takes, in that there's a push now to get the Elam ending in the NBA. I don't know if you heard about this.
I didn't, but I told you I love this idea from when I first heard about it 4 or 5 years ago.
Right. You play to a score, not to a time, right?
Yeah. I think it's great.
It would be good. It would be really good. Yeah. All right. I know what you're going to ask me.
Yeah. So what's our next topic?
It's a tough nut to crack, Josh, as my daughter would say. Tough nut to crack. I want to go with, I had a few written down, but I think we can stay in the world of entertainment and go with our favorite television theme songs.
Oh, this was sort of on my list, actually. I never mentioned it to you, so I think I might like this one.
I mean, there's a lot, because obviously the 80s is like a boom for TV theme songs, and we tend to gravitate towards the nostalgia of the 80s, but there's a lot of great theme songs that came after. In the 90s and the 2000s, the theme songs actually became so important to the identities of the show and launched careers even, so I'm going to consider kind of everything, but we'll see where our lists converge, I guess.
This is actually, because I'm looking at my list, and it is on my list, this is the first time that you have picked a topic that is actually already on my list.
That's so good. All right, so next time, Josh, TV theme songs. Get your research ready.
Get your popcorn ready?
Yeah, get your popcorn ready. We're going to listen to some TV theme songs.
Great. Can't wait.
All right. Good talking to you. Talk to you next time.
Okay. Have a good week.